Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the keynote address of Mapping India's chairman. He is the founder and chairman of Virtuous Retail, a master retailer, and has a current portfolio of over 10 million square feet, encompassing the prestigious and premium VR community-oriented shopping centers across the country. He is also founding partner of the Singapore-based investment firm Xander Group Incorporated. An alumna of Harvard Business School, where he was elected a Baker Scholar and head of his class, he is now faculty at Harvard Business School. He is also founder and member of the governing body of Ashoka University across India. Ladies and gentlemen, to deliver the keynote address, powering the future of retail, please welcome Chairman Mapping India, Sid Yog.
Very good morning to all of you. Let me start by saying thank you to MAPIC IRF for inviting me to this wonderful event and for letting me share some of my thoughts with you this morning. It is a pleasure to be back in Bombay and be part of this wonderful retail community. Let me also thank the organizers, especially Anuj, for inviting me to this event. What I thought I'd do in the next 15 to 20 minutes is share a little bit of my own thoughts on where I think the retail industry, and when I talk about the retail industry, I mean it in the most broad sense of the word, is likely to be heading over the next few years, something that obviously all of us are excited about, concerned about in equal measure. Tell you why I think I have those thoughts, and really kind of leave you with a few questions rather than answers to ruminate on and think about, which over the next 2 days as you cluster in smaller groups or you participate in other discussions will perhaps provoke more questions, which is the way to start seeking answers. Let me first start by saying my association with the retail industry in India started many, many years ago. I was in Delhi University at Sri Ram College, and to earn a little bit of extra money, I took a part-time job at Weekender in Kamla Nagar. It was 5 hours a day in the afternoons, trying to sort of, pad my pockets a little bit to enable consumer spending, as many of us are wont to do when we are in college. It was the most humbling experience and the most exciting experience at the same time. To be able to interact with customers to make your first sale, I think is a very special moment when somebody believes what you're selling, the product or your word or the service that you're providing. In equal measure, my responsibilities included, as I referred to in the letter I wrote to all of you as delegates, window dressing or creating the shopping window, which I believe in India is still somewhat of a challenge from my retailer friends' input to me. But that was the start, and many years later when I returned to India to set up Xander, our journey continued as we became investors in retail real estate. Starting with Maker Maxity, not very far off from here, which we were investors, proud to be investors with the Reliance Group and with the Maker family for many, many years. And it is, as Darshan just told me, about to go for fit-outs and about to open, so that's a proud moment for us who have been supporters for a long time. Investing in other types of retail real estate around the country, partnering with the Tata Group in retail in the early years in 2005 and 2006, again for a real estate strategy. All of this is a private equity firm. And investing in multiple retail projects across the country. That was one part of my retail experience in India. My other experience was with my hat as a public investor on. Xander has multiple platforms. We have been substantial major investors in Tata Retail, Trent, which I believe this morning hit its all-time high, which we're very excited about, PVR, Inox, and others. And so my second reference point to the retail industry in India is these wonderful retail companies that have built themselves over the last couple of decades. My third reference point for the retail industry is from the vantage point of being an early stage investor. As a third platform at Xander, we back entrepreneurs and provide growth capital. We recently backed an F&B business called Suzette here. We have been excited to co-invest alongside other private equity firms to both build and buy out retail businesses. So that's the third vantage point as an investor in retail businesses. But perhaps the fourth and most important vantage point is actually as an operator. At Virtuous Retail, we are a master retailer. We try and operate as a retailer, not as a real estate owner, believing that if we need to succeed, we need to partner with our retail partners, operating partners, and also we co-own sub-brands. So I know the challenges and the daily difficulties and the daily hard work, blood, sweat, and tears that goes into running a retail business in India. Running a retail business anywhere in the world, but particularly so in India. So I hope that with those four different vantage points, one as an investor, both in real estate and in public and private equity in retail, two as a person working with young entrepreneurs, building retail businesses and enabling retail businesses, also investing in retail technology, and third as owner and operator of a retail business ourselves. I hope what I have to say will resonate with at least some of you. Let me start. Let me start by telling you why I think the retail business matters. And if the $5 trillion economic goal that the Prime Minister of the country has recently set forth is to be achieved, this industry matters perhaps the most. By some measure, it is the largest employer in this country. 8%, and I'm not counting here all of the millions of self-owned and operated mom-and-pop businesses across the country. I'm just talking about employment. 8% of national employment comes from this industry. 950 billion, and when I talk about these numbers, you have to understand that for the last 4 years, statistics have been a little difficult to come by in India, so these are averages of multiple numbers that many folks who are much better equipped than me to put out numbers and statistics have put together. We've just tried to collate and average them, so excuse me, these are just reference points, but they are kind of in the range. By some measure, most people believe it's about $1 trillion or about to hit $1 trillion. 950 billion is the latest estimate for organized and unorganized retail. $76 billion of which is in the organized sector. Pause for a moment and think about it. Just about 8 to 9% of the retail industry in India is currently organized, of which about 27 billion is e-retail. If India is to become a 5 trillion economy, these numbers have to grow substantially. Without this, that goal is not achievable. And even if it be a stretch goal, even if we are to grow, perhaps take a little longer to get to that goal, the point simply is this is a growth sector. This is a sector that employs a large part of our people. This is a sector that is a very large part of GDP, about 10%. And this is a part that is mostly unorganized at this point. So for all of us, that's great news. Just to give you a reference point about some other countries, and I picked these three particularly because I think in different ways they define bookends and are also example right bang in the middle. The USA, a developed economy where about 85% of the industry is organized. China, which many say is not an emerging economy anymore, and I agree, it is a developed economy, but still only 20% organized. And Malaysia, which I picked just because it is a smaller country, but in the developing sort of segment, and a large part of it is organized, 55%. Compared to this, as I said, India is just about 10%. So that's sort of the spectrum of opportunity that we can think about experiencing. The numbers, of course, India is at about $1 trillion. China and the US are about $5 trillion in the organized segment. So that's the opportunity, so to say. Of course, we talk about e-retail. We talk about how e-retail is disrupting bricks and mortar retailing. I somewhat beg to differ. I think both have great opportunity to grow. Both have to grow for the retail industry to succeed and to deliver what the consumer really wants at the end of the day. Of course, in India, the e-retail industry has been growing at about 30%. The bricks and mortar industry is growing about, depending on who you believe, between 12 to 18%. China is the world's largest e-retail industry. Of its total retail sector, which, as I said, is a little over $5 trillion, about 30%, 1.8 trillion, comes from e-retail. Compare that to the number I put up earlier, India, we're at 26 billion. 1.8 trillion, 26 billion. The US is 1/3 of China's e-retail size at about 600 billion. Though the size of the US retail industry is much larger still than China. It's about 5.8 billion as opposed to the 5.2 billion in China, though China is supposed to overtake it in the next couple of years if the Chinese and the Americans can sort out the trade war issues, which we'll come to in a minute. In e-retail, in India, across categories, except for consumer electronics and perhaps apparel and footwear, especially in food and grocery, which really is the largest chunk of the retail economy, the penetration is still tiny. So not only is the industry tiny, the penetration across sectors, subsectors, is even smaller. About 0.1% for food and grocery, which together, unorganized and organized, forms about 530 billion of the 1 trillion or 950 billion number I gave you. So obviously, great growth potential across e-retail, but that doesn't mean that the bricks and mortar retail industry is not going to grow as well. Huge potential for that as well if you look at this. India, right up top, 1.3 square feet per capita retail space. Compare that to any of those other big markets or small markets. Developed, USA, China, 2.8, which is still about more than double. So huge potential for the organized retail industry in the bricks and mortar segment as well. It's not just that the online or e-retail sector is going to take over the retail industry. As I said, if we have to succeed, both have to grow over a period of time. So coming back to how do we address this opportunity? What will power the future of retail, which is the theme for the next 2 days? I've tried to put forth some very, very basic messages, but I think very, very important as we think about what is going to be driving this industry, driving retail, and enabling it. A, curating experiences. The customer doesn't want product only today. It is all about experience. We're living in the experiential economy. If we do not understand this, we are going to fail. An experience can be curated in different manners. It is about creating memory. The touch point for the consumer, for your brand, is that association or that memory, and that memory is not just about getting a product at X price. It's about all of the other touch points and all of the other things that you can do to tell a story, to curate something that leaves a tangible impression upon the customer that perhaps they will share. And it can also be more than traditional retail. The best performing shopping center in the world is Bicester Village, in a little English village outside of Oxford. By all measures, especially trading density measures, my friend who runs and built Bicester Village, Scott Malkin at Value Retail, will tell you that he's not in the retail business anymore. He's in the creating experiences business. He curates tourism. Most of Bista's clients come from all around the world to England, many of whom go from Heathrow directly to Bista, spend 2 days there, and maybe wave to the Queen while going back to Heathrow and flying back to where they came from. That is the power of retail. That is the power of curating experiences. That is the power of being a master retailer. But that is also, at the very, very essence of it, understanding that what the consumer or the customer wants has changed. Customers want experiences. All of us want experiences, whether it is how we live, how we shop, how we dine, or how we work. 2, building communities. We are in the community economy. I talked about co-working, co-living, social media, Instagram, all other kinds of community building initiatives. One of my colleagues, who's a little bit younger than I am, is insistent that, Sid, you don't understand. Every audience today, or every member of the audience, has an audience. That's what retailers need to focus on. Yesterday was the day that you focused on that individual. Today, you got to focus on not just that individual, but everybody he or she might be connected to, because it's instantaneous. Their experience is going to get amplified through various channels immediately. It's not going to take even a microsecond, because they're going to go into the shop or go online or do whatever and probably amplify their message right there and then, which can create, help, grow, or destroy your brand. So it's all about the community. And if we do not understand that, we are going to fail. 2, community is about local context. This matters. What may be local or resonating in Mumbai may not necessarily resonate or be relevant in Chennai. Forget about whether it's India or China. Forget even for Mumbai. What resonates in South Mumbai may not resonate in Thane. It is about communities, local communities, and by the way, while communities are being amplified using social media, they're also becoming tighter and smaller. The localization or customization of community, who I am, what I want, who I hang out with, is becoming, at one level, very, very micro-focused. The two almost seem like at odds with each other, but it isn't. Because while I want to amplify the message that I might be coming up with, I want to make sure the message carries along my micro-community. And focusing on that becomes important. It is the community economy as much as it is the experiential economy. So social media influencers become very important. These aren't necessarily movie stars or sports stars or your brand ambassadors that we used in the old days. These are people like you and me that might, or even people who might be sitting inside a kitchen or an office or in a car and have followers from around the world, and what they say really matters to their community. They have the power to create brands. They have the power to destroy brands. They are the new champions and the new ambassadors of brands. They matter. 3, technology. And I purposely use the word technologies, not just technology, because technology is an umbrella term. It means different things to different people. To some, it means access to the internet. The Prime Minister in Texas, in Houston, the other day was mentioning how data or access to the net is the cheapest in India now, because data costs the cheapest, right? That's just one part of technology. Virtual reality. Virtual reality is another. Augmented reality, cognitive computing, artificial intelligence. You can think about all the different types of technologies that might be available. Some may be relevant, some may not be relevant to you. The fact simply is that you got to kind of make sure that you are embracing all of these technologies, understanding what they represent, trying to synthesize them into your brand or your message or your platform, and trying to deliver what the customer wants rather than what you think the customer might want. The customer, obviously, as Steve Jobs said, sometimes doesn't know what they want. But Steve Jobs also said that once you give them what they don't think they want, their feedback is exceedingly important to customize, to adapt, to change, to perfect what that product or service may look like. The question marks just represent the technologies that we don't even know are coming down the tube. And the important message here is that we need to have an open mind. We need to be retooling all the time. We need to kind of send this message down to the junior most or the furthest person from us, whether it's the in-store or the in-store retail employee or the person who is working on our supply chains or the person who's fronting, building, whether they be digital platforms or real estate platforms where we position our brands. Technologies will matter. They will change very rapidly, and our ability to adapt to them will define whether we succeed or we fail. The ABCD of a virtuous cycle. A for adaptation, just because of what I mentioned, not just technology, but changing consumer preferences, the fact that community and social media make it exceedingly difficult exceedingly easy to change. We must make sure we are adapting all the time. Brands matter to connect to the customer, and the customer gives you data which you can synthesize, which you can then use to adapt again. So all in all, the A, the B, the C, and the D work together. But very, very important to remember that we must make sure that we are remembering that at the end of the day, the customer matters. Your brand must resonate with your customer. The customer's preferences and habits feed into your data. The data you must synthesize, otherwise it's just garbage, and use, hopefully, that synthesized version of that data to apply back to the adaptation of your brand. And finally, what will enable the future? That is powering the future of retail. These are the enablers. A, real estate. India specifically, the quality of retail real estate in this country sucks. We all know that, right? There are people who are trying to make a little bit of a difference, but it's like a drop in the ocean. 5 million square feet got delivered last year for a country this size. So retail real estate, quality retail real estate will be an enabler. It's a great opportunity. It's a tough one, but a great opportunity. Consumer finance. The ability for the consumer to finance their purchasing decisions will matter. So that is going to be a great opportunity and a great enabler for the retail industry. Policy, not just GST or the rationalization of GST in India, but all kinds of other policies which might enable or create hurdles to the retail industry. Policy will matter. Policy makers will need to understand that if this sector has to grow, they need to work hand in hand with the industry. And finally, of course, investment, not just foreign investment, domestic investment as well, equally important. Investment will matter, but more importantly, investment, and most importantly, investment in human capital will matter the most. This is a sector built on people. The touch point matters, and what we do to train, enable, help our people in this industry retool, reimagine the industry and the sector will be critical. So with that thought, I leave you with this one quote, because sometimes in the retail industry, especially in India, it does feel like that. But this is Winston Churchill saying, success is the ability to go from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. So I wish you all success, and I know that most of you will do mighty things, and that is my hope and wish for you. But for those of you who may take a little bit of time in getting there, do remember that, because that is what retail is all about. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I wish you a great 2 days, and I hope that you will enjoy yourselves interacting with members of the community and hearing from some of the wonderful speakers that MAPIC IRF 2019 has lined up for you. Thank you very much.